Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Continuous Testing Odyssey. Learn the best practices for end-to-end web app testing. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation using your computer speakers by default. However, if you would prefer to join over telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce Subbu Bhaskaran, Senior Product Manager at Sencha. Welcome, Subbu.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys about end-to-end testing. And thanks, Sauce Labs, for partnering with us on this webinar. So this is actually an exciting time to be in the testing space. There's just lots of innovations going to simplify test automation, and what test automation was, five years ago or a decade ago for web testing has significantly improved thanks to Selenium for the most part, and the tools that are derived using the WebDriver technology has really helped a lot of customers to achieve cross-browser test automation. But even with all the innovations, there are still a lot of gray areas about how to achieve a continuous testing process where there is minimal manual intervention in terms of test execution and defect analysis. But having said that, the test automation, to me, at Sencha, we consider it as a separate development project. The reason being that it's an ongoing thing. You have to keep maintaining your test cases. You have to keep adding new tests. You have to keep modifying the locator values. There's just a lot of maintenance that should happen to make it run smoothly. But with a good test design, with a good process, I think the pain can be alleviated. And before we go into the presentation, I would like to talk about what Sencha does. So Sencha is a pioneer in the JavaScript framework software development space. So Sencha was a company that was founded in 2007. We created the Ext JS framework that has over 115 components that lets software developers across the world create rich data-intensive web applications. So for people who are not aware of Sencha, so we are a frameworks company that helps hundreds of thousands of developers create rich web applications. And Sencha has just released the latest version 6.5 of the framework, and Sencha Test is a product that is a close complement to testing web applications that are built using Ext JS. So this is just for a brief introduction for people who don't know Sencha and Ext JS. And before we move on to the slides, I would like to present a poll question. So if you can take some time to answer this question about which web app framework does your development team use, and if you don't know, just select don't know. But there is a big raise in popularity among using JavaScript frameworks. Gone are the days where it was just a simple HTML, CSS styling, or it's more of the front end takes on a lot of heavy lifting today, and with new frameworks coming out every month. We have the Angulars and the Reacts and frameworks like Vue taking off. I think it is a very good time to be in the web space because of these innovations. Web applications are more interactive. It's more cross-platform. No more, it works on Chrome and not works on IE. Gone are those days thanks to these frameworks. And using frameworks also gives a lot of benefit for test automation engineers, because the JavaScript frameworks themselves come with a lot of hooks that can be used to create test automation. So if you're not aware of this, that's a good point to take note, because test automation can be really simplified. So that's a That's a good number. So as expected, Angular is definitely being used, a very popular framework, and React is catching up. And Ext JS, which has been in there for a long time now, is actually not up to the same popularity in terms of the mass, but the enterprise developers are relying on Ext JS for doing a lot of the development. And yeah, with too many frameworks coming out, it's obviously the choice of a developer to create. But as test automation engineers, we should be aware of what frameworks are being used to do the software development, because that can give us a lot of input into how to use these frameworks, how to use these hooks to create test automation, because they could be very valuable in terms of creating robust test cases. All right, when you at a very high level, test automation should be a conversation at a company level. It should not be a conversation between a team or testing team or even development team. I think it should come from the top, just like how a strategic decision is being made to create a web application for business benefits. Test automation should also be discussed at a very strategic level. And the goals for test automation should be aligned very closely with the business goals, because the quality of a product should be a significant metric for a company to get more customers, retain customers. So without these kind of key performance indicators, I think just shunning test automation is a bad practice. And test automation should also be considered because it helps get time to market, faster time to market, and increases customer satisfaction. And applications can be maintained longer term, because as I said, with the increase in use of frameworks to create applications, the frameworks changes every year, and applications have to keep up with upgrading to the latest framework. And sometimes, as we saw from Angular 1 to 2, there were a lot of things that changed in Angular 2 where customers were trying to keep up. And it's happened with every framework, with Ext JS, with React. It happens with every, and it will happen even more. So automated testing can definitely help companies do these upgrades in frameworks, because it can tell what is the state of the application before and after the upgrade. And there are lots of repercussions that have to be discussed having no automation. As I said, all the benefits can be discussed, could be a significant impediment for an organization's success. And at a tactical point, you have to discuss about the ROI. Okay, what is the typical ROI? Well, this is not a thing to decide for a make or break case for automation, but ROI is a very good metric to go to your stakeholders and tell them that, hey, if we do this manually, we are spending more time doing this thing with less coverage. But if we invest initial amount of time in automation, we can definitely get to a significant amount of coverage, and that will definitely help with better quality of the application. And you have to consider timeline, you have to consider the current resources, because if you're a manual testing house, if you want to start a new automation project, you should definitely look inwards first to see how do we achieve this, what is our skill set. Okay, if we need to get into automation, should we get somebody from outside, or should we go and learn something? Like learning Selenium or learning how to use commercial tools, because every commercial tool offers training, offers support, and Selenium has a great community with help from companies like Sauce Labs. You can definitely get the needed help for getting trained on any technology that you want today, and with courses online courses that are available. I think it is very useful to have that conversation, to look inwards to see what is the current team setup and how you can get in the automation projects. And you should also think about the application maturity. If you are just designing a new app, it's always good to have the top conversation of automation. It will be a good time to go learn a new technology, get up to speed, because when the UI of the app becomes ready, you are actually ready to start writing your test cases. And with the current test frameworks, the way they behave, you can actually start writing your test cases even before the UI is ready. Because if you know the logic, you can start implementing those logics as within your objects in the framework, and you can start filling in the gaps when the UI becomes ready. And finally, test design, which is a very important aspect. You have to think about data, you have to think about infrastructure, you have to think about network, you have to think about what kind of test design you're going to follow, how you're going to get identify elements, how you're going to work with developers to get properties of the elements that you're going to test on the web. And after all these things, that's when you decide on a tool. Because if you decide on a tool, you're kind of putting yourself into a box. So what we recommend is you have to first identify all the strategic and tactical goals, and then finally come up and say, okay, to fit all my needs, this is the best tool that I'm going to use. That's when you start the evaluation process. Because once you start the evaluation process without identifying these metrics, you're going to get into a very narrow area where you won't be able to come back, because you're going to spend a lot of time evaluating tools. But if you have all these metrics in place, you can easily create a checklist to say that, okay, I'm ready to select this tool because it satisfies most of my conditions. And believe me, there's not one tool that can satisfy all of your conditions. You just have to make a best decision out of which satisfy most of your conditions. And finally, before we move on into the Sencha way of doing testing definitely boosts the value of our business. We have seen it time and again. We've been doing a lot of automated testing over last 6 years since we started writing automated tests. We see that the frameworks are more robust now. As I said, we have totally 120 components, and we run over 400,000 test cases to cover all of these components and the underlying core framework for every pull request. And we use Sauce Labs. We are a heavy user of Sauce Labs. We run close to 50 VMs in parallel to test all of these components and the framework together. So we see that our customers are benefited by this because they use our components to create applications, both internal and external, which means that they need components that are well tested so that they don't have to test it. So we tell our customers not to test the components, just test the logic that you're building using the components. And we see that the framework, we run tests across multiple frameworks. We have frameworks starting from 4, 3, 4, 4.2, 5, 6, 6.2. We have multiple versions of framework that we are testing against because our customers are in multiple versions again. So and then they upgrade from framework 4.2 to 5. So we test all of these processes along the way. And we also have applications in the kitchen sink. We also have end-to-end applications as examples built using all of these different versions of the framework. So everything has to be tested, and we test everything as much as possible on every pull request. And we also have continuous testing processes that will run on, okay, we have 6 developers doing the frameworks, hypothetically. And when all of these developers submit PRs, then there's a continuous build that runs that tests everything on the multiple versions of the framework. And having test automation definitely increases the confidence, and you can be confident as a team. It increases morale. Okay, you're delivering good products, your customers are happy, and good product definitely makes happy customers, and everybody is thriving towards that. And test automation is a key aspect of making sure that you're delivering good product. And within Sencha, as I said, for us, quality is very important. We have done a lot of work to get to where we are today. In fact, the product that I'm going to be demoing today, we call it it's the grandchild of the product that we use internally at Sencha. At Sencha, we use Jasmine framework. We write tests using the BDD syntax, and we use Selenium to run the test, to execute the test. We use code coverage framework called Istanbul that is integrated, and we also have a custom inbuilt test runner that can invoke tests into multiple browsers. So all of the different frameworks put together, when the entire regression suite is run, we run approximately 420,000 test cases. And we run them across 50 different virtual machines in sauce labs. We used to maintain tests in-house, and it got kind of very heavy maintenance, so we moved everything into sauce, and we are very happy that we did that. And we constantly keep innovating in cutting down the time. Sometimes it could just take 20 minutes. Sometimes it could just take 10 minutes to run these test cases. But on average, we see that it's between 20 minutes and 1 hour based on the connectivity with sauce, based on the bugs in framework. So the more test cases fails, it takes longer to aggregate the report and collect and dump it into our servers. So the bottom picture that you see is a screenshot from our TeamCity build. So the tests are run from TeamCity, and as you can see, we have close to 425,619 test cases for that particular PR. So it's a huge effort. I mean, we did not build 420,000 test cases and this is across multiple browsers. We run close to across 12 different browsers, both web and mobile browser. But what is important here is there has to be a starting point. And for Sencha, that starting point was in 2012 or 2011. And over the last 5-6 years, the number of tests has grown up to 40,000 test cases, which when you run it across multiple browsers, it goes up to 420,000 test cases. So that's the bottom line that you have to take from here is you have to have a starting point. So you cannot think about the end goal of having, oh, I have to build 500 test cases to be successful. No, you have to say that every test case that you write, that you automate, is going to make you successful along the way. At the end of 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, you are going to probably have 3,000 to 4,000 test cases running across multiple browsers. And that's the time you can look back and say that you have definitely achieved a lot. And every little minute that you save by running these tests, even 10 test cases on 4 different browsers can save a lot of time if you're doing it manually versus automated. So think about it in that way, and you will start automating if you're not doing it already. So how do we do that at Sencha? So a developer submits a PR, and we have built bots along with the TeamCity that runs in TeamCity that looks at these the source code changes, and our developers instruct the bots on how to build the app and how to kick off the test. So all of these are automated in a bot that was written by the developers. So when the PR is ready, the bot merges it with a branch and a branch of the main source code. And once the branch is merged, and the tests are kicked off. Now, these tests run for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and once the tests are complete, the development lead looks at the results, and he makes a decision. Okay, the PR is ready, so there are no significant failures. We can merge it into the main branch, and this is done for all of the developer PRs at Sencha. So everybody who is working on the frameworks team submit PRs, and the tests are run on the branch with the PR, and then finally, when all of those PRs are approved and they are merged into the main branch or the master, a continuous build is kicked off, and this kind of takes care of running the same set of tests and all the new tests the developers write and integrate with the regression, and it ensures that all of the PRs with the main branch is working fine. And that's when we say that, okay, the build is ready for QA. So QA can run their automated end-to-end tests. So QA runs these tests on the kitchen sink examples, the examples on our website. They also run it on all of the different applications that are deployed using these different frameworks. So every application is refreshed at the end of release, and all of these tests are run by QA to make sure that with the newer framework, the applications behaves exactly the same way they did in the past. So we'd like to ask another question here about how you write your tests. Thank you. So if you can take the time, because this is very crucial on how you're writing your test, because conventional tools, traditional tools have heavily relied on record and playback. And with the new frameworks that are coming out, there are lots of different opportunities to write tests using the API methods that are provided by the test framework. For example, Selenium comes with a lot of different options to click on button, type into a text field. You don't have to necessarily record and playback. You can just use the APIs and the methods within those APIs to do a lot of test creation. Similarly, Sencha Test comes with its own set of APIs that can be used to target the Ext JS applications, because Ext JS application has its own language. It talks by itself. It communicates to the Sencha Test APIs. So this communication helps us create a hook. So that's great. So a lot of people rely on API methods. So that is fantastic. And record and playback, while it is a great tool to have, what we have found is record and playback kind of again puts you into a boundary where you are forced to use the syntax of the record and playback. And then you have to go and manually edit the record and playback to create meaningful tests. And by using the APIs, you are more confident that this is going to work because, for example, in Sencha Test, we call them ST Futures APIs because it kind of waits for the Ext framework to render the application and ensures that the components are rendered on the page before it performs an operation. Similarly, Selenium has these kind of wait mechanisms to wait for the application to be rendered, so you can hold off before performing an action on the application. And if you're using Angular and using Protractor knows to wait for Angular, or it has syntaxes that says, okay, wait for Angular to do the action. So all of these kind of takes away the explicit wait times that we use in the past to write tests, and the explicit wait times are kind of the killer of automated tests. So all of the test frameworks that come today are coming in with built-in mechanisms to ensure that the test framework waits for the application to be rendered before going through the test cases. And how we run test cases in Sencha is we do concurrent VMs, as we said, but we also split up test cases into multiple chunks. So for example, if you're running IE11, which is kind of slower as compared to other modern browsers, but a lot of customers do use IE11. So we run a tremendous amount of test cases on IE11. So, but to overcome the slowness of IE11, we split the number of test cases into multiple chunks, and the concurrency and the individual thread mechanisms that we have implemented allows us to run these tests on different machines and then collate the results for IE11 and update them as one single at one single location. So this is very effective to break up your work into chunks and execute those tests on multiple VMs. And this not only speeds up the processes, this also eliminates all of the false failures because of timeouts. And instead of investigating the timeout and then rerunning the test cases, it is better to take the time up front to see how you can split up these chunks of test cases on multiple VMs using multiple thread processes. And thinking about result aggregation, you have to take into consideration that when you're running the tests on multiple machines, you're going to have different the results on different machines. So you have to think about that when you're writing or using libraries for result aggregation. So at the end of the day, you have to consider this as a journey. This is not a one-time thing. You have to put upfront investment, and you have to think about maintaining this in the long run. But this adds a lot of value for your teams. Think about test design. Think about separation of concerns. split up UI and logic tests separately, put them into separate buckets so you don't have to necessarily worry about UI failures when actually your logic is passing, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the order is going through, your customers are able to end with the registration process, but you can come back to the aesthetics of it later. You have to think about a pragmatic approach. Not everything should be automated. Sometimes it's not worth taking the effort to automate complex things if you don't have the time. So leave that to when you have the time, or when you have somebody more technical to do that for you if you're not very technical. So don't bog yourself down with trying to automate 100% of it. That is not the real goal here. The real goal is to keep increasing the coverage percentage at every release. So some of the things that you can think about in terms of how you can separate in the UI versus logic is, in Sencha we have devised methods to check if the UI is rendered, if it's visible, if the component is visible, if the grid is available, if a button is enabled or disabled, having visual testing, checking if a text is displayed correctly. All of these things can be done just by using the API methods. And now to check if the price is correct, or to check if the grid shows the right value, you can also use built-in expect mechanisms within test framework. So Jasmine, which is the core of Sencha Test, comes with expect methods or expectations that can be written using the built-in expect methods. That gives you a lot of different options to compare values, to check if a text is displayed, to check if a text is contained within a big string. So you can do all of those things using the built-in Jasmine framework. So finally, the big trap that you have to overcome is the finding the elements, and sometimes a lot of teams are kind of relying on IDs or XPaths, and this is very dynamic in nature because of the frameworks, use of JavaScript frameworks. So you have to be aware of the fact that these IDs and the XPath values are going to keep changing every time the app is rendered, or every time there's a new build. These values might change. So you should definitely work with developers to talk about what are the core items in the framework that you can use. For example, in Ext JS, you can use the X-type value, which is a very unique value for a component that is created on the application. For example, a grid is a component in Ext JS, and a grid is used to create tables. Now, this table can be given a unique name by your developer, and this unique name is given in the X-type value and the item ID value for that grid. Using these values will give you more chance of success, because these values are changed only when the developer changes the value. So this is very useful to go talk to your developer about all of these different values, and we have implemented methods in the tool to make sure that you can identify these X-type values and item ID values directly from the product, rather than relying on your developer for everything. Because in a mature application, there could be hundreds of screens, and for every button and every form field and every grid, you don't want to go and talk to your developer to get the X-type value. So we have built-in mechanisms to get these values. Similarly, these kind of methods are available for Angular and React, so you can rely on these methods first to identify a component or an element, and then if none of these are available, then you can rely on the ID or the XPath value. So before I move on to demo, test automation is not complete until you plug those tests into a CI system. The reason being that manually kicking off test cases and waiting for the test results to come is still a lot of bottleneck in terms of saving time. So even if your development team doesn't have a CI process, it is worthwhile investing the time to just implement a very basic CI process that can be used, like just getting Jenkins or any other tool that is available out there that can be downloaded, and the tests can be just plugged into those CI tools, and the test can be scheduled to run every night rather than someone having to kick off those tests. So, and by building in mechanisms within your tests to make sure that if there's a failure, if it's handled properly, so that all of the tests are completed, I think you can have a real good continuous testing process, even if your development team doesn't use a CI system. So, as a QA team, you can be the you can take the initiative to kick off a continuous testing process that can be very beneficial for your company. So today I'll be showing Sencha Test for the demo, and here, as you can see, this is called Sencha Studio. Sencha Studio is the UI for Sencha Test, and it's a very flexible product. It comes with it's built using Ext JS framework, and it is wrapped in Electron, so it can be installed on Windows or Mac. And it comes with a command line utility that lets you run tests from a CI environment or from a terminal or a command line window. The way we have constructed this is we have provided ways to manage test cases. We have provided a built-in test runner to run tests on either browsers on your local machine, or you can run tests on browsers from a remote machines using a Selenium grid, or you can also run it on Sauce Labs directly from Sencha Studio. So the way you can set it up is you can set up browsers for Sauce Labs and Selenium WebDriver, which is my local Selenium jar file. So I can run tests on any of these browser pools. I can directly add more browsers that are available on the Sauce's infrastructure right in my test case. And once I have all the browser set up, I can select the scenario that I want to run, and these scenarios can be run on multiple browsers simultaneously. So here I'm going to be running this test on one of the browsers in Sauce Labs. So once I kick off these test cases, I can go to Sauce Labs and see if my test has started. There you go, the test has started running on Sauce Labs, and I can monitor my test results right here. And the same set of test cases can be just plugged into a command line using the STC syntax, where you are just providing the STC utility to run the test for this particular scenario on this browser pool in Sauce Labs. And the results can be stored in a local archive server within Sencha Test. And this archive server lets you store all of the test runs from command line and your CI system. So this will give you an opportunity to go and analyze test on your either your CI system or from directly from Sencha Studio. So right now we are running these tests on Sauce Labs. As you can see, as and when every test case is completed, the results are directly updated in Studio. So this is very useful when you're actually debugging your tests to run the test manually once to make sure that everything is fine. As you can see, you can run it on Sauce Lab directly from Studio. But if you're not already using Sauce Labs, if you just want to run it on your local browsers before you run it on a remote browser, we have provided an embedded Chrome browser and an embedded Selenium server. So you can actually run it on your local Chrome browser on your local machine, and the Selenium browser automatically kicks off. Selenium server automatically gets started when you select this option. So this is very useful for you to create tests, debug them, and run them on your local browser to make sure that it is working fine. and then you can run it on Sauce Labs from Studio to make sure that it's working fine on a remote browser before you can plug it into a CI system. And this kind of immediate feedback lets you look at your test cases. If there are failures, you can go into your test code and you can look at your test cases that way. And when you're writing your test cases, you should always consider writing your test cases using a page object method or other test design where you can have centralized locators where you can create a page. For every page, you can create an object, and then you can just put all your elements within the page. So here I have a page for the login. I have a page for a dashboard. So in the dashboard page, I have all of the different elements and components that I have. I have defined it using the Sencha Test API. So st.component, what it basically means is that it can recognize any Ext JS component within the application. So as I said earlier, to use a locator, you can use the X-type value or item ID value where it is available, and it is very, very useful if you use these values when they're available, because they will not change unless the developer changes. And you can, in your Scrum meetings, in your daily standard meetings, you can talk to your developers and say that you are using these X-type values, and this adds a lot of weightage because the developer will think twice before changing this. And if the developer changes it, they're going to let you know. So as a QA person, you can go ahead, change your test cases to reflect the changed X-type value. And by putting this into a page object, you are kind of centralizing these locators, so you know exactly where you have to change, and it's just that one place you're going to change. And I'm going to use this asset count panel or asset value panel in all of my test cases. So actually you can see I'm using it on 2 different test cases. And the syntax that you're seeing here is a Jasmine syntax. So you can describe a very higher level scenario, and you can go ahead and have all of your test cases for that higher level scenario. It could be a feature, it could be a page. It depends on how you want to test it. So here I'm testing the dashboard page in this particular Jasmine spec. So I have all of my test cases within the dashboard page here. So as you can see, since I've defined my asset count panel here using the st.component and the X-type value, I can use that using the page object syntax, where I'm just calling within the page, I'm calling one of the functions, and since it uses the st.component API, I can now use all of the methods within the st.component. So one of the methods is the .text method that gets the text value using the inner HTML within the app, and it gets the value, and it checks if 301 assets is present within the displayed text. I can quickly show the application here. So this is the asset registry application. Oops. There you go. I'm not able to log into my own application. All right. So the similar way you can create a lot of different test cases just by defining them once here. Similarly, for the assets page, I have created the same set of test cases. Same way I've created the page objects. I have defined all the buttons in the assets page, and I have given them X-type values, and I've written component queries where I have used the X-type value, and within the asset form, I have a button that has a text equals back, because within the asset form, I have another button that has a reference equals save and delete. So I can just define my component queries within which is very useful in the EXTJS context. Here you can call the X-type value, and you can use the button X-type value within that, and then you can reference it to a text or another reference value within the button properties. So in this way, you can just keep constructing your component queries for all of the different buttons and elements that are present in the page. So in that way, you know that these are very robust syntaxes, robust locators that you're using. And once you've created them once, you can just keep using them across your test cases here. So if you go back to the runner, you can see that the tests are almost complete, and I have a lot of failures because I was not able to log into the application. So I need to go and check what's going on there. But the main point that I want to drive here is you can definitely see that having these integrated before you start writing your test cases will give you a lot of leverage in the future, because the upfront investment does not go waste, even though you don't have anything to show until the first couple of releases. Once you have your test runner figured out, once you have the reporting figured out, once you have the integration with Sauce Labs figured out, you are good to go. And then you can think about how you can identify the elements, how you can identify the components within the page, and you're on a path to success if you have figured out all of these things. And that's what we did at Sencha. Sencha Test, as you see, is a work of multiple frameworks coming together: Jasmine, Selenium, WebDriver, and we have made this available to our customers with all of these packaged into Sencha Test. So the studio has a built-in workspace mechanism that maintain all of your test cases, and you have integrated test runners to run your tests. And finally, we are launching a new product this week, and in this product, we have also brought in a way to run your protractor tests right from Sencha Test. So for this, you have to create a new context within Sencha Test. The benefit here is you can run all of your existing protractor tests using the built-in test runner, or you can run those tests on a browser form. So here I'm going to be running these tests on a built-in test runner. So as you can see, the embedded Selenium server has started, and it has launched a new browser where it is doing the basic verification of the AngularJS page. So this kind of helps you to do testing on multiple frameworks using the same product. We are still at a very early stage in this integration. We are just testing this out with the protractor team. We have some bugs that we are discussing about why we are getting two results here. These are results generated by the protractor library. But the main point is you can see that your expected value is not equal to the actual value, so the test case has failed. Now, the benefits of bringing this in is you can leverage the integration with Sauce Labs directly from Sencha Test. You can run the tests on local Chrome browser. We are also working on bringing in capabilities to integrate screenshot tests, and you can also just plug in all of these test cases into your CI environment to run the test in an unattended fashion. So that is kind of the demo that I wanted to show. So we can go into Q&A now.
Thanks, Sabu. That's terrific, and we've got some good questions for you to address. I'll also introduce Titus Fortner, who's a solutions architect here at Sauce Labs, and we've got a couple of questions that I think will make for some good dialogue between you and a couple of Sauce-specific questions. Sabu, first one for you. Question Enrico asked: Does Sencha Studio, or is Sencha Studio able to run tests on a native mobile application?
So with the 2.1 launch that is coming up, we are doing some research on trying to get Appium tests run from Sencha Test, but right now you can run on mobile browsers, but you cannot run on native apps. So I don't know if Sauce Labs wants to communicate on, or comment on that question on how you guys do that.
I'm not following exactly what you mean, but yeah, like oftentimes if you can't use Appium for a specific application, you can set your browser to mobile emulation mode and run if people are using your application on their phones. But if it's an actual app, then you need to use Appium with that.
So it sounds like it may be a 2.1 feature to be able to use with Appium. Here's another one for you, Subbu, just came in. Is Sencha Studio a client application or a cloud solution?
It's a client application. So it's an Electron-wrapped Ext JS application that can be installed on Windows or Mac or Linux.
Okay. We have a question from Naomi from early on, and that is, do you run all tests, unit, JS, end-to-end, while merging the pull request against branch, or only run all for continuous builds?
That's a great question. So at Sencha, we do run the tests for every pull request, all the tests. We do have a separate end-to-end testing process that is run for continuous integration, which is more elaborated. But the UI, the unit test, the UI unit test, as we call it, because the UI unit tests are the ones where we render all the UI components into a HTML page, not rendering the entire app, but just the HTML page. And we test all of those UI unit tests. And we also do integration tests where we have 2 or 3 components interacting with each other, and those are integration tests that we, again, we do it on an isolated basis. We don't launch the entire app. And finally, there are developer-specific end-to-end tests that are run. So we have 4 different types of tests that are run on every pull request, and in the continuous build, there's more elaborated end-to-end tests on the example applications, on the kitchen sink applications, which kind of increases the number of tests.
Okay. There are a couple of questions related to the relationship between Sencha and Sauce Labs. You know, what is the benefit of Sencha over Sauce Labs? Is Sencha based on Sauce Labs? I think if we could go into a little bit about how, you know, what Sencha is doing and then its relation or use of the Sauce Labs testing platform. In particular, I think you showed that you can run tests locally. You can run them on the Sauce Labs platform. Would you be able to run them on a Selenium grid if that was the test infrastructure of choice?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a good question. So Sencha, as a company, uses Sauce Labs to run all of our testing on the Sauce's platform. It's an amazing infrastructure to that lets us scale to 50 VMs pretty easily, and we run 420,000 test cases. But from a product perspective, we have brought in the same capability, so our customers can if they have an account or if they want to try Sauce Labs, they can get an account and just put the account details into the browsers tab here, once the account is set up, the browser pool is created, it becomes available within the test runner to be able to run tests directly from Studio, or this browser pool can be used in a command line syntax or within the CI environment to run tests directly on Sauce Labs. Now, if you want to run tests on a Selenium grid, you can do the same thing. You can create a generic Selenium WebDriver and point to the Selenium form that you have created in-house. Usually Selenium has a 4444 port with IP once you get those IP and port. And if you want to run it as a grid infrastructure where you have multiple VMs connected as node, you just still have to give the hub details to Sencha Test, and those browser pools can also be available within the test runner for you to be able to run tests.
Great, thank you, thank you. I think that this was addressed, but just it is one of the last questions that come in. Does it support parallel execution?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, it does, and you can also increase the concurrency for a specific browser type. So for example, when we define a browser pool, you can say that I need Chrome with a concurrency of 4, which means that when you're running the tests on Sauce Lab, it spins up 4 different VMs, and it splits the test on 4 different Chrome VMs. If you have, let's say, 1,000 test cases to be run on Chrome on a Mac, it spins up 4 Chrome Macs, and you can split up the test cases. And once all the tests are run, the tests are aggregated back, and the results are aggregated and displayed to you for one of those VMs. So which is a great thing. This is a process that goes underneath, and the Sauces infrastructure allows us to do that. So we have built in that capability in Studio for you to increase the concurrence on a specific browser. And you can definitely run all of the test cases parallelly on multiple browsers, and it saves you a lot of time by doing that.
Great, thank you. So just a few more as we're getting near the top of the hour. There's kind of a question I'll throw out to both of you, because it kind of represents, I think, what's happening in the industry, as you said at the outset, Sabu. But the question from Jake is, who in the organization should own test automation, developers or QA? And then there was a similar question that your testers are similar to developers, right? They write code for testing. So maybe if we could talk a little bit about what is going on with QA moving to automation engineers and developers being asked to write more of their tests. I'd like to get your perspectives on that. You want to jump in first, Titus?
Yeah, sure. So definitely to write good automation, you need to understand good development principles. And the best automation, the best testing practices I've seen have had the people who are writing the tests working closely with the developers, whether they are the developers themselves or they're just working closely with the developers. And so ideally you have good communication either way. Now, a lot of existing companies are trying to migrate their manual testers into automated tester roles, and there are a lot of challenges that come with that in general. But yes, ideally, the more you can be working together, the better it is. And some companies are even getting rid of their QA departments and requiring their developers be the ones to write their browser tests as well. But that's going to take a long time for that trend to work itself through the rest of the industry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Sabu, what's your point of view?
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree with what Titus just said here. At Sencha, the tests are mainly written by developers, all the UI unit tests, but we do have estet people who write automated tests. But having said that, I think QA manual testers who want to cross the chasm and start automating, as Titus mentioned, should try to learn some development principles, because I mean, you're not going to develop an app, but learning those principles will definitely help you create good automated scripts, and learning the basics of, you know, which technology you're going to use. If you're going to use JavaScript, learning a few of the asynchronous properties of JavaScript, learning some of the APIs and methods in the framework that you're using. I think you will, over time, you can definitely start putting together a good automation platform. And definitely you should take the help of developers in understanding this principle and setting it up in a way that can be maintained in the long term, with properties like page object methods, with properties like APIs and targeted methods, that kind of like what I showed initially. This will help you to create test cases that are very similar to how you write manual test cases, But implementing those development principles on top of that will definitely help you create more robust test scripts. But having said that, if you're starting out new, if you're a completely manual test team, you don't have any technical background, it is definitely worth taking the help of developers to understand what's going on and trying to get that set up. And whoever is going to take charge should definitely get trained up on tools that you're going to use, because that upfront investment should go in before you start doing anything. Even customers who are moving from traditional Java background to writing apps using JavaScript, using Ext JS framework, do go through the training with our training team to understand the principles of JavaScript, the principles of Ext JS. I mean, even though they have a significant Java development background, it is not easy for developers even to switch to a new technology. So you can apply the same logic here. If you are from a manual background, you've been testing an app for a long time, you can definitely go to the automated realm of testing, but you have to put in the upfront time, and you have to be vocal about the point that you need training, you need resources to learn stuff, and that's when you can do your job much better. So you have to enforce on those things to get there.
Oh, that's great. Well said, both. So we're pretty much at the top of the hour. We'll take the opportunity to thank you, Sabu, thank you, Titus, thank you everyone for joining us today. As Leo said at the outset, we will be sending out an email within the next day or two that includes a link to the recording and the slides themselves. And we'll also give you the opportunity to reply back to Sencha or SOS with any additional questions that you may have. So really appreciate the time today, and wish you all well, and happy testing. Talk to you later.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.